Hi everyone, my name is Hannah and this is Pepper and Pine, and I have a botany lesson to share with you today. We're working on broadleaf trees and I'm using a couple of resources as inspiration for this lesson. This is the DK Eyewitness book on tree, and I am using a few of these pages as content inspiration for our lesson, as well as a walk in the deciduous forest. This book has a lot of information about the different life within a deciduous forest versus just talking about deciduous trees. And I have my ABCs of nature. This has been a tremendous resource for our botany main lesson block, as well as other main lesson blocks. You can sort of envision it as an encyclopedia. It has so much information. It's really well done. It has a lot of illustrations. It is quite dated though, so it is hard to find, and some of the information might have been updated with new research. I also have Botanicum, and this is going to be our illustration inspiration for this lesson. It is a stunning book with gorgeous illustrations and some content as well. This is the Live Education Waldorf Curriculum for Botany, and while I am doing this lesson after conifers, this lesson on broadleaf trees actually comes at the very end of the main lesson block. I also have a couple of samples that we picked up from a local regional park so that we can get some compare and contrast between broadleaf trees and evergreen trees that have needles. For this lesson, we're going to be working in our main lesson book. We also have our Generals Chalk Pastel pencils. I like these for detail work and they still blend pretty well, but we also have our Sargent Art Square Chalk Pastels for this lesson. The primary inspiration for this lesson comes from the book Botanicum, but we also have Nature Anatomy, which has been a tremendous resource as well. I especially like the illustrations, how they're simple and easy to copy. I just don't find that this book has enough content for our lessons. And here are my Sargent Art Square chalk pastels. These I use on the chalkboard as well as in our main lesson book. You do need to use a matte fixative when you are done using your chalk pastels, otherwise it will smear and spread onto other pages and your work will get ruined. It's also easier to spray once you're done before doing your written content. That way your hand doesn't get in the way as your illustrations would get smeared otherwise. So I'm starting out with some colorful leaves for this page, since on the previous page we did a lot more with green leaves and acorns, and I wanted to see some of these more beautiful colors that deciduous trees have during the autumn months when the weather cools and the days get shorter and the trees go through a process of letting go of those leaves in order to preserve their moisture throughout the drier and colder months. So for these illustrations, I really wanted to get the correct shape for the leaves because that's the whole point. And I realized that for the first one, I sort of didn't get that, and I could not remove this page, and I did not want to put another sheet of paper over it. So I just sort of tried to work with it, but it's my least favorite out of all of them. This next one, I'm using this golden yellow to do this leaf, and it's so beautiful. And us living in Southern California do not get that many deciduous trees with their beautiful leaves changing colors. And even when we do, it usually comes about much later in the season, closer to November, December, January, when those leaves finally fall from those trees. And we don't typically have these glorious colors because we do have a lot of evergreen trees, even other varieties of oak trees which are deciduous. For where we live, we have evergreen oak trees, and that is the sample that I'm doing right now because I definitely wanted to include something that was local and relevant for us. And so I do have the interior live oak branch with some of those leaves and the acorns on it. So we added that as part of our lesson. That was not in any of the books that we were using as inspiration, but I definitely wanted to have something that was relevant for us, and also a little bit of an anomaly when it comes to broadleaf trees, since most of them are deciduous and they do lose their leaves in the fall. For this lesson, I started with the illustrations taking up the majority of the page without thinking too much of where all the written content is going to go, and I didn't leave too much room for that, so it's just going to go around these different leaves. But as we had 3 lessons for this particular lesson. There are plenty of spaces for us to write about it. Definitely want to spray your work once you are complete using a matte fixative, and once it is completely set, you can come back in and do your written work without worrying that you're going to smear your work because it is completely protected, and this way it will not get onto other pages as well. And while I do remove the onion skins, it is important to put them back in as you are writing over your pages, otherwise it will transfer onto previous pages. So just stick them back in, and then later if you want to remove them you can. I tend to like to look at my pages as 2-page spreads. So here's our 2-page spread with all of the written content surrounding our beautiful illustrations. I hope that you enjoyed this look at our lesson. If you would like to check out some of the other lessons in this series, don't forget to check out the blog post that accompanies this video, where you're going to find all of the tutorial lessons as well as the projects that we did and the resources for this unit. You can find that link to the blog post in the description box below. And if you'd like to see how we're homeschooling on a daily basis, you can find me on Instagram and now on TikTok at Pepper and Pine.